Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday morning Mortgage Coach call. Every Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock Pacific, we're here dedicated to your personal and professional success. Hopefully, you got the email announcing all of our events in March, and you've got just an awesome group of industry leaders. Darren Hardy to kick off the month, top of the mountain in terms of celebrity leaders and speakers that are in the Mortgage Coach community. So hopefully you're looking at that. You got it both on your desktop and your mobile device. And our marketing team did a great job of every time you see a different speaker, great place to register. So really excited about today's event. And Darren Hardy, welcome to today's call, my friend.
Pleasure to be here, Dave.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. I want to frame this a little bit, because I do believe that 2015 is a really unique year for the mortgage industry, and it's a year for change. You know, every loan officer on this call, you believe in delivering advice and going from being a rate quoter, an app taker, someone that delivers rates and fees, but how you bring that to your borrower and how you bring that into your borrower in a way that gives you a competitive advantage with realtors. I find so often that you don't bring your A game every time you're up to bat. Sometimes it's the C game, just good enough to win the business. Sometimes it's the B game because the customer pushed you. And at the end of the day, the best of the best, and what you're going to hear from Darren, the best of the best, they bring their A game every single time they're up to bat. And last week's coaching call guest, Anthony Incinero, who's also a regular on Success Magazine, this was one of his quotes, and I think it's just, it's a great way to kick off the call. Sometimes is nice, always is differentiating, defining, and value creating strategic advantage. So whatever you hear from Darren today and in this conversation, it's all about execution and doing it every time. Darren, I know he's a regular in Success Magazine. Anything you want to add to Anthony before we move into the meat of the call?
No, just that, we get a lot of solicitations from people who want to be featured in Success. It's a pretty heavy filter, and Anthony made it all the way through. And boy, he's loved so much by our editorial staff. I know that I've even tried to get even more print love for Todd Duncan in there, so it's been tough just because they love Anthony. So we got a lot of great options, a lot of great people, and Anthony's delivered so many fantastic articles that people love. It's wonderful that you had a chance to have him on your Mortgage Coach call, because I know he's doing great work in the world.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic, and we've interviewed him, I think, 3 or 4 times, and he's become a friend to Mortgage Coach. So, folks, hopefully this wisdom hits you. Write it down. It's your first takeaway of the day. I do want to remind everybody, because we have so many realtors on today's call. I mean, we've got hundreds of mortgage professionals, and we'll have north of 100 realtors, because I've been hearing of all these mortgage coaches that are bringing their realtors. And next week we have Tom Ferry. So don't miss Tom Ferry. Sign up. The following week we have former Navy SEAL Phil Black. I mean, just, a great star cast of mortgage coach leaders. So today's call with Darren is going to be what we put under the category as an unplugged. He's not just coming in with a presentation, either providing a TED-like presentation or a bunch of slides, although I will have slides and pictures. This is going to be an interview, and I have asked many mortgage coach leaders to provide me with questions. So some of these questions are going to be crowdsourced from the mortgage coach community, and some of them came from our time last weekend. We were at Todd Duncan's Achieving Leadership Excellence event. So Darren spoke, I think it was Monday, Darren, that you led and delivered just crazy value. Todd was the host. Daniel Harkavy of Building Champions led. Ken Perry provided how to turn compliance into a competitive advantage. And then, of course, I had my opportunity. And what made that event so cool is not only was it great business, I got to bring my wife, got to get some time with a lot of leaders. I got to bring my kids. And we did life together on the island. So, hey, Darren, it was good catching up with you, and it's kind of nice that we had that time together to prepare for today's call.
Yeah, indeed. We got dinner together. That was about the extent of my time there, besides flying in, doing the event for Todd, and flying out. So any extra little curricular activity I had was with you eating sushi. So, yes, good Good times. I would say it was great breaking bread with you, but my dietary restrictions have me not eating bread these days. But good communion all the less.
Yeah, well, I gotta get that on my program too. So before I bring Darren and we start asking the questions, I want to provide some framing slides. These slides came from my presentation at Achieving Leadership Excellence, and I wanted to bring some thoughts to everybody on the Mortgage Coach call. So again, 2015, time for change, and I do believe that true disruption can take place in the mortgage industry, and we've got to do that through changing the mortgage experience. And when you look at some mega trends that are happening in our space, there is this big trend of balancing digital versus traditional, or really bringing those two things together. And I recently saw a presentation from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I really like this slide because it shows, for the most part, 50% of everybody, regardless of whether they're real tech savvy, they're relationship focused, they want to get digital communication. I mean, at the end of the day, you've heard me say it, and we had our guest Kristen a few weeks ago, where she made this comment that if you were doing business with someone who spoke Spanish and you spoke Spanish to them, you'd have an edge. You'd connect with them. And let's face it, everybody in today's market speaks digital. And so you need to speak digital to them. When you look at home buyers and realtors, 55 million plus are using the mobile phone as an MLS in their back pocket. Zillow has made that. So everybody is speaking digital, and it's not just millennials and Gen X. It's everybody. I mean, when you look at these stats that came out and you look at the percentage of folks making over $75,000 a year, 72% of them have mobile phones. So being able to speak digital and be able to personalize your information, your advice, it's a mega trend. It is critical. And everybody in this call, hopefully when you hear what Darren's going to share, you're going to connect better. The other big mega trend happening in our space right now, Darren, and this is just an FYI for you, and a heads up for everybody, is that we've got to make compliance a competitive advantage. And I had a lot of people bring questions in. Hey, ask Darren, in a really heavily regulated industry, how do I overcome that and be more successful? And in our space, we've got the CFPB, this beta website that they put out. It's very clear that they want to commoditize pricing. They want to empower the consumer with knowledge so that they can shop rates better, and so they're going to be providing that. And then when you look at the new GFE that's coming out on August 1st, it's really clear that they want consumers to be able to look at the cost of that loan over 5 years, which, again, I think makes common sense, and it's a great job by the CFPB for bringing this leadership. But for you in the mortgage business, this means you guys got to get smarter, and you need to provide more education, and you need to go from rate quoting and just delivering price to actually creating a mortgage experience. So everybody on this call, you're already doing this because you have Mortgage Coach. You can show the cost over 5 years. You're educating borrowers, and you have the ability to deliver your mortgage advice in a way that's unique, different, and better. And you're able to personalize. You're able to add your video and your audio to every Mortgage Coach. So Darren, everybody on this call, these are members. These are paid members of Mortgage Coach, or they've invited realtors and friends. So, kind of understanding some of those market forces, Darren, and again, you know what we do well. Try to kind of craft your answers to be as relevant as possible to our audience. I do want to remind everybody, if you haven't already signed up for Darren's Darren Daily, I would love to know, first of all, if you have a favorite quote from Darren, put it in the questions as I go. But if you haven't signed up for that, make sure you guys sign up. This is one of those things that's part of my morning read. Every morning, I check it out. Often, he's got a video or an audio. Again, one of the things I love about it is just super simple, super quick. It's a 1-minute hit, and I can check it out literally on my mobile phone while I'm having coffee in the morning or on my desktop. So again, everybody, share your takeaways as we go. Share your favorite quotes, and let's get started, Darren Hardy. Let's have an unplugged conversation, and let's start it with you. Just tell us a little bit about your story, your role at Success Magazine.
Yeah, well, again, it's a delight to be with you, Dave, and with the Mortgage Coach community. For those that don't know, this morning is a very special morning for me. This is the day that we are officially releasing the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster publicly in retail, and this is essentially the birth of the mission that we've got with it. It's not a book. That's really not the point and purpose of it at all. It's sort of the, let's call it the cause leaflet or the manifesto of a very important mission, which is to onboard 10 million new entrepreneurs over the next 3 years. And we'll talk more about, kind of why that is and so forth. But generally, my story is simple. I mean, I started out like everyone else. And I started out scared. I started out nervous. I started out without a clue of what to do or what to expect. And the entrepreneur ride for me started when I was 18 years old. And what's odd is, and interesting, you see these great famous people that we put on the cover of Success Magazine, whether it be Richard Branson or Steve Jobs or Donald Trump, the rest of them. In private conversations with them, they all revealed they all started out exactly the same way. They started out scared. They started out nervous. They started out without a clue of what to do or what to expect. And yet, they created the life and the universe-denting impact that they did. So if anybody out there is feeling a little bit scared or nervous or not feeling like they have a clue of what to do or what the road ahead has in store for them, just trust me, you're on the right track. Okay, so that's the first thing. I mean, the other thing is I've never had any training or education on any business that I've ever done successfully. It's interesting. I mean, I finished 1 semester of college, but I also probably am one of the most personally developed people I know, particularly since this has been my business for the last 20 years. And that's one of the great distinctions that I find true of any uber achiever that I get a chance to spend time with, is that they're just avid learners. And it doesn't matter what they did or didn't do in college or university, that was not where they deemed their education, that their education was constant and ongoing. And this iterative desire to constantly learn and grow and improve was what evolved them to the place of their success and their current greatness. And so my own personal life has been a living laboratory. I mean, I've done lots of things wrong to figure out how to do it right, which is a great reason why I can help a lot of people, because I've figured out what works, what doesn't, what's for real, what's a decoy, what's phony, and I can save people a lot of skin and money and time and accelerate their path to success. And so in general, when it comes to the role of Success Magazine, I happened on a business in 1994 that put me at the center of the personal development industry when we launched a television network called Success Channel. And then for the last 20 years, I've sort of been the curator of the industry, running 3 television networks in this space: the Success Channel, CSTN, and Mastery TV. And then now, as publisher of Success Magazine, we're reaching 3 million people a month, and we're carrying the torch for a 120-year-old legacy property called Success. And what benefit that has been, what privilege, what honor that has been to not only carry the torch forward from Napoleon Hill, who was once an editor of Success Magazine, whose chair I sit in today, but the ability to have access to the greatest achievers, the greatest leaders, the greatest captains of industry of our time today, and try to draw out, figure out, and then disseminate the best ideas, insights, and strategies that I've collected over the last 7 years as publisher of Success Magazine. And so, Dave, if you were to ask me how I got here, I have absolutely no idea. Like, it wasn't part of the plan. I didn't have some vision board that looked like exactly where I sit today and the position that I've got. But the one thing that I did do is I committed wholeheartedly, very deeply, and very rigorously into my personal development. And it's one of the things that I would attribute to any unique success that I have is that all day, every day, all I'm trying to do is get better at whatever it is that I'm focused on, whatever my few vital functions are, my few vital projects are. I just want it to be better today than it was yesterday, and I want to work deep and hard enough so that I can set it up so that tomorrow I can be better at it than I am today. And this sort of constant iterative growth and improvement process catapulted me way further than I possibly could even see or imagine when I was 18 years old trying to design what my life would look like for the rest of my life. There's no way I could have had a vision or a goal that would have been anywhere close to the life that I lead today. And that's the great takeaway, is when you focus more on growth than you do even your goals. Like, you have a sort of view of the direction you're going. You're pointing yourself towards the horizon, and that's all great. I'm obviously a big believer in goal setting, but focus more on growth every day than even on the goals, and you'll far surpass what you can even imagine you can achieve when it comes to setting goals. So that's a little bit about kind of the journey here.
So let's drill down a little deeper on the book. Why did you write the book in as much detail? Again, it's a real honor that today is the day that you're launching it to the public and you're here on the Mortgage Coach community. But let's make sure we really nail that, because I think the mission is so valuable.
Well, we're living right now. Maybe the one takeaway you take from today's call is that you really grasp this, and that is that right now, as you sit there listening to this call, we are living through the greatest time in all of human history to be an entrepreneur. I mean, basically, with the death rattle finally vanishing of the industrial age, the few that used to control the market, control capital, control resources, control supply, control talent, all those points of control have been obliterated because of technology. And really, the power's been placed into the hand and palm and pocket, as you said, Dave, of the individual entrepreneur. I mean, the opportunity for wealth creation by the sole proprietor, the independent contractor, the entrepreneur has never been greater than it is today. So the reality is this: millions of people will move into entrepreneurship over the next several years by either inspiration, because it's the greatest way to live, or by desperation, because their once previous jobs and titles and the way that they and their fathers made an income, their mothers or sisters made an income, those jobs and those titles don't exist anymore. And so they'll be pushed into entrepreneurship. Well, the challenge with that is they're not ready. They weren't conditioned to be an entrepreneur by their upbringing, and they weren't conditioned to be an entrepreneur by their academia experience, and they weren't conditioned to be an entrepreneur by their corporate experience. And yet they're going to be thrust into it. And already today, Dave, we have a failure rate of 66%. 66% of people who officially start a business, a DBA, the rest of it, fail within the first few years. 2/3 of people who start fail. That's a horrifying statistic to me. When I really got my arms around that, you stop looking at it as a number and you start thinking about it as the lives of families and the children who depend on that income and the futures that are crushed and crippled because of that failure rate. I wanted to do something about it, and particularly getting ahead of this wave of people that are going to be moving into entrepreneurship. So that's why the great mission of this book is not to write a book, but basically for it to be a guidebook, an onboarding manual for entrepreneurship, and to onboard 10 million new entrepreneurs over the next 3 years who succeed because they were properly warned about what the experience is like, and equipped with the essential skills they need and prepared to conquer the one thing that could possibly stop them, no matter how skilled or how warned they are. And that's really the content of the book. See, when I went to figure out why people fail as an independent contractor, and this could just be somebody who's in commission sales too, by the way. Like, you don't have to get a 1099 basically to be an entrepreneur. If you are paid on your performance, you are an entrepreneur, no matter what government ID your compensation is filed under. And when I try to figure out why people fail, and all the things that are written about of why businesses fail, things like capital, location, credit, inventory, management, competition, all those things were wrong. The reality of the reason why people fail as an entrepreneur, as an independent contractor, they are not external factors, they're internal. And they're not economic on the most part, they are emotional. And so a big part of this onboarding process is warning people of the experience they will go through, the feelings they will feel as they take and traverse this roller coaster ride. And if they just understand that it's normal, that it's part of the process, not only will they be able to brace themselves and easily ride through, but they'll realize at the end of the ride, just like you experienced at the end of a roller coaster ride, that that's actually what made it so exhilarating and so thrilling. And the only thing you want to do when you finish the ride is to get back on, because truly it is the most exalted way to live. There is nothing more satisfying than being completely in control and responsible for your own life and income and lifestyle, in the rewards that being in business or being in control of your income can create for you and your future is the way we were designed to live. So that's the reason why this book was written. It was written to be a handbook to onboard people into entrepreneurship, for those that are going through the ride, to equip them with the skills they need, for veteran entrepreneurs themselves, to remind them of how they've gotten to where they have gotten and what skills they need to sharpen and refine further if they want to turn this this roller coaster ride into a rocket ship to the moon, and get them over the plateau and into the stratosphere so that they can experience the success that they have in their heart and that they desire, but need to know how to go about doing it. So that's why it was created, and we hope to create a worldwide movement. Well, with this book being sort of that initial step of assisting people to becoming a successful entrepreneur.
So when I read that white paper, that special report you did on the 8 tragic mistakes of an entrepreneur, I mean, first thing, when I read the first page and you talked about the failure rate, I'm like, well, when you look at the mortgage industry and new people come into the industry, whether it's mortgage or real estate, same failure rate. And then when you really look at the industry and you look at the number of loan officers that are consistently closing over 5 loans a month and really, building the kind of career and the kind of lifestyle that they want, that's, 70% close less than 3 to 5 loans a month. And so I think it's important for everybody on this call. I mean, this just completely connects with you. And heck, for anybody and everybody in life, the principles of success in this book will just make you happier and make you more successful. So Darren, let's talk about that, that white paper you had forwarded over to me when we were doing some prep for it on the, call it the 8 tragic mistakes of most entrepreneurs. What are a few of those, before we get into crowdsourcing questions, let's frame it with a few of those 8 big mistakes.
Well, when I look at all the 8, let me just sort of isolate a few that probably those that are on this call suffer from the most. And so the first one would be that people fall in love with their business, and that is a false and misdirected love, meaning they love their product or their business when they should be in love with their client, or they love the features, as you talked about, quoting rates and why one loan product is better than the competitor's loan product, when they should be in love with the transformation that their service can deliver for a family, or they're focused on the process of what they're doing every day, grinding it out and prospecting and running the numbers versus the purpose. I'll just self-reveal and confess, kind of when I was schooled on this myself. When I was in the real estate business, I was frustrated with my own results and the numbers that I were being able to convert and so forth. And I had this mentor that I would get together with for lunch every so often. And I expressed my frustration with my latest sales numbers, and they just weren't where I knew they could be, and I couldn't figure out why. And so he said, well, let me see your prospect list. And so I opened up my briefcase, I pulled out the file, I pushed it across the table to him. I said, these are the prospects in my sights right now. With ambition dripping off of every word. He raised an eyebrow at that comment, looked down, opened the folder, and inside was my prospect list. A few sheets of worn paper with the names and contact information and so forth. And he said, well, I see the problem. And he pushed the folder back over to me. And I said, what? Was there not enough people on there, or not enough detail? Was I not being too aggressive enough, whatever? He leaned in and he squinted his eyes in a way that, great masters and mentors do when they're about to impart some great wisdom, right? He said, let me ask you this. If I had a list like this and your name was on it and you saw it, how would you feel? Because at the top of the list, I had written in big, bold letters, hit list. He said, how would you feel about being on my hit list, about being in my sights, quote unquote, as if you were looking at me at the barrel of a loaded gun? Well, obviously I shirked and shrugged like a kid being chastised for skipping school. And he continued, and he said, look, Darren, no one wants to be your next hit. They don't want to be your next victim. And when you label them that way, you think of it that way. And when you think of people that way, you treat them that way. They know it, and they can feel it. They can tell. And he pulled a pen from his pocket, reached over, reopened the file folder, and crossed out hit list and wrote, families I'm going to help next. Now, he said, placing the pen back in his coat, get back out there, and you'll notice a difference right away. And he was right. I mean, it was amazing, the difference I began to see in how I approached people, and more importantly, how they responded. So before I would pick up the phone, I'd look at my list, and I'd think before about the family that I was calling. You know, what did they need help with? What were they struggling with? Were they in a home that they couldn't afford? Did they need a bigger house now that they had children, one in a better school district? Were they first-time home buyers, overwhelmed and nervous by the thought of such a large purchase? And as soon as I shifted my perspective, my success rate improved dramatically and my sales shot up. But the best part of all, and this is really the key advice here, is that I really began to enjoy the process because I turned my process into purpose. I figured out how I could go around helping people rather than trying to close transactions. And I would find ways to help people above and beyond just their real estate needs. And when I started doing that, I mean, people would begin beating a path to my door because the way I operated in the world, the way that I came across, the feeling that I transmuted in all my communication was sincere to the point that I was really out there to try to do what I could to help someone, not trying to sell something. And what started out for me in real estate as an exercise in sheer brute force finally became something that I felt good about, and far more than just my commission rate. So I would say that, you know, the first one is that you want to take your love, and instead of loving your product or your features, love your client and the transformation that you can create. Instead of focusing on the process that you're going through day to day, focus on the purpose of what you are stewarding and the great life solution you are bringing to the people who get the great fortune of hearing from you that day. The second thing is on the 8 mistakes is being too cheap. And unfortunately, when a lot of people step into entrepreneurship, they approach it too cheaply. They don't invest in the right people. They don't hire A-level talent people. They don't invest enough in marketing because ultimately you're just in the sales and marketing business. You're not in the mortgage business. You're not in the real estate business. You're not in the hair salon business. You're not in the auto mechanic business. You're in the sales and marketing business, which just happens to sell whatever it is that is your product or service. So investing in your marketing, and then third, investing in your learning. You can't pay too much to develop yourself and to develop the people around you that support your success. So that's mistake number 2, is just being too cheap and investing not investing enough in people, marketing, and learning. The third, I would say, is thinking you're too smart, thinking that you know it all, and thus you try to do it all. You know, the greatest achievers we've ever seen in the world have gotten to where they are because they hired great consultants, advisors, and coaches. The interesting thing about Michael Jordan is he never won a championship in the several seasons that he played until Phil Jackson was the head coach. And you think, well, but he was Michael Jordan. Well, Kobe Bryant played several seasons in the NBA and never won a championship until Phil Jackson. And both those guys went back-to-back, year 1 and year 2, that Phil Jackson was the head coach. Andy Murray, who was now the great Wimbledon champion, and, you know, went to the Wimbledon 3 times and never won a single set until Yvonne Lindell became his head coach. And then he won Wimbledon, he won an Olympic gold, he won the U.S. Open. And so sometimes, you know, as Andy Murray's coach Yvonne Lindell said, he said, I took a good player and I made him great. And that's what we all are. We all start out good, but it really sometimes takes the external input of other great coaches and advisors like you provide, Dave, and your community provides, to take that, what is already good, and help rise somebody to the level of greatness. So don't try to be too smart, and don't try to do it all. Bring in outside experts to help level you up to the point of greatness.
Love it.
Those would be the three.
So a couple of takeaways, guys. I mean, first of all, this connecting with me, family versus file. You know, just that heart of serving our customers. You know, when we think of our product, you know, the product is a rate, it's a fee, but how are you packaging that product? You know, are you packaging that in a way where it's an experience? Are you packaging that each and every time you're up to bat with a borrower in a way that helps educate them, helps make them a better decision? And then the other piece, when you are packaging and you're delivering that, are you doing it in a way where you're putting your personality and how much you care about that client behind it? So whether you're a realtor on this call or whether you're a mortgage professional on this call, really think about, you know, the file versus family. Really think about how are you delivering that, you know, that taking your product and really turning your product into sales and marketing. It's an experience. So let's get to a question from Josh Metal. He had a good question here. What is the single biggest catalyst in transforming oneself from the 80% average producer to the top tier 20%? Anything come to mind, Darren?
Yeah, I always ask any CEO or leader that I'm mentoring is you know, what's the one thing you do to make it rain? You know, if you're the chief rainmaker, which any leader of an organization is, what do you do to make it rain? And it might not actually be the thing that is, you know, on your business card. There's a single function that you do that truly makes it rain for your organization. I'll give you for instance. So when I was in the home of Joel and Victoria Osteen, who you know is the guy that reaches 40 million people through his televangelist Christian leadership broadcast show every Sunday, and I don't see Joel as a Christian evangelist. I really see him as the CEO of a several $100 million organization, which is essentially what he is. And I said to Joel, I said, how are you pulling all this off? Because essentially he's in the same business I am. You know, we're trying to inspire hope and abundance in the world, and we're trying to push and prod people to seek their greater potential, and he's reaching 40 million people every Sunday, and I'm not, right? So how are you pulling this off? And he said, you know, it was interesting. I had to go through a really important growth moment. When I first took over the church from my father, he said, I was trying to do it all. It's been weddings and baptisms and funerals, and I was just exhausting myself. And the whole organization stalled, and it stalled because we could only grow as far as my calendar could stretch. I was the great constraint. Everybody was waiting for me, and there was no more of me to go around. He said, so I had to figure out how to get out of doing most everything and figure out what's the one thing I do that contributes to the most of this organization. And he said, I finally figured it out that really it's just those 22 minutes on Sunday. Those 22 minutes when we're broadcasting and the cameras are on, if those 22 minutes are hopeful, if they're inspiring, if they're influential, then that drives the whole engine. Everything else that we do is powered by the success of those 22 minutes. So I got out of doing everything to focusing on just those 22 minutes every single week. So his whole week is lined up to deliver on those 22 minutes. You know, Wednesday, he just writes and drafts and research, spends the whole day just thinking about what he wants to talk about on Sunday. Thursday, he writes out his sermon word for word. You can't reach him. His family, his office doesn't have access to him, just writes it out. Friday, he spends the whole day memorizing it. If you've ever seen one of his broadcasts, he does the whole dang thing without looking at any notes because he's basically spent an entire 2 days writing and memorizing it. And then Saturday, he delivers it a couple of times for a dry run to a closed audience. And then Sunday, lights, action, camera, and the guy is magic. I mean, he just is, I call, one of the greatest keynote speakers of our time, because a lot of speakers in the personal development industry, they have 1 or 2 keynote speeches, and they build an entire career on it, and that's all they've got. And Joel's got to do 22 of those every single year. And they're great. They're great because that's all he does all week. And that 22 minutes powers the several $100 million organization that he's got. And that's really the key lesson. You want to go from being a 20% producer to being a top 2%, a 1%, a fraction of a 1% producer. Figure out that one function that you do that makes it rain, and then isolate as much time as humanly possible to that one function, which means clearing out most everything else. Warren Buffett said the difference between a successful person and a very successful person is a very successful person says no to most everything. And that's what you need to do to move from a 20% producer to a 2% or to a fraction of a 1% producer, is to say no to most everything else, but the one or two things that you do to truly make it rain, and then build a confident, capable team to take care of the other functions that that are not the rain-making activities that make the till ring, but can be accomplished by a great, capable team that you can engage in your organization. So, you know, that would be what I would come top of mind with, is isolating that single function and becoming a master at it, and get out of all the other things that pull and drain your bandwidth, time, energy, creative, life force, power from being excellent at that single thing.
So Josh, he not only crushed your first question, he took, you know, to be the 2%er. Everybody got it. If you want to, you know, be among the, you know, top 2%, realtor, mortgage professional, how do we get to that area of laser beam focus? So Sarah Middleton, who's the head of production for Fairway, you know, leads a great values-based sales force of over 600 loan officers, some, you know, great mortgage coaches that are on this call. She really wanted to address the fact that we are in such a highly regulated industry, and we have some really, you know, big compliance changes happening. You know, how do we compete at the highest level and not lose momentum? You know, because at the end of the day, you know, you can have a great month, great quarter. You know, how do we compete at that level but not lose momentum?
So I think we'll address the regulatory thing later down the line. But if we're just talking about competing at the highest level against competition, not losing momentum, my answer would be is forget the competition. Just look in the mirror and worry about the person looking back at you. I know in talking with Michael Jordan, you know, in an answer to a question that I'd asked him, I don't even remember the question, but it was something about competition. And he says, he said, I don't worry about the competition. If I compete against them, I have to lower myself. You see, nobody can expect more from me than me. I expect more from myself than anyone else can imagine. And so if I compete against them, I end up lowering myself. Jim Rohn would put it this way. He said, look, if you're building a building downtown, don't worry about the others who are building their building. See, a lot of people, they end up taking the time from their own building project to look and worry and study other people's buildings. And some even leave their building altogether and spend their time trying to tear down other people's buildings. And Jim Rohn would say, you know, just focus on building yours. Both activities take time and energy away from building your building. So really, I've never really focused on the competition. Personally, I've only focused on the thing that can beat the competition, and that is the image staring back at me in the mirror. And so it's really easy to start, you know, kind of looking around your environment for the reasons why, you know, you're not making the progress you need to make, and you're not as successful as you want to be, and the rest of that, when in reality it always will come back down to, you know, what are you doing today to be better than you were yesterday? And that iterative, constant, never-ending, just insatiable appetite for growth and improvement will catapult you so far beyond what the competition is doing or is capable of. It's amazing. It goes back to the compound effect. It's like it's the small, seemingly insignificant moment-to-moment improvements, and those small, seemingly insignificant improvements compounded over time create massive differences in results. And too often, too many people, they start, looking around. They stop and pause to look around, and or they do what I call drift. A lot of people in life don't fall off the cliff. They don't fall off their goals. They don't fall off their resolutions. They just drift ever so slightly. And then you take that out 6 months, 9 months, 12, 18 months, 10 years, and they're so far off track, they're staggered at how they could possibly have gotten to where they are, how they could have gotten that overweight, how could they have gotten to that point of health crisis, how they could have gotten to that point of on the brink of divorce or financial collapse. And it wasn't for any cataclysmic event, it was drift. So that's why I say it's a constant sort of review of the reflection in the mirror and a constant iterative improvement on those small, seemingly insignificant bumps in progress, and the competition will be deemed irrelevant.
Beautiful. So I think, so many of the questions that came in had kind of compliance in front of it because it's such a top, it's a challenge in the marketplace for mortgage professionals, especially this year more than ever. We've got some real big legislative and compliance changes. But Dean Johnson, the head of Northwest, the Cornerstone, another great values-based mortgage coach company and partner, he really framed his question around, in this heavy regulated industry with rules that seem to prevent entrepreneurism and even promote being a commodity, how do you suggest loan officers set themselves apart from the competition?
Well, I will say both Fairway and Cornerstone love those companies, love the leadership of those organizations. They both have hired me. They both have invested in their people's personal growth and development. They both invested into the education and training of their realtor partners. And so of the thousands of mortgage companies out there, those two have an affinity in my heart because they have partnered up with me in success to invest in their people and into their partner relationships. So anyway, to address the question, so this idea of regulatory impact and technology changes, I was on a publishing panel some while back, and if there's an industry that's been affected by technology, it certainly is publishing, right? I mean, most print publications are struggling, and many of which are no longer even exist. And so it's been an industry certainly affected by change and technology. So I was on a panel, and I was the last one on the panel. Everybody gave their answer for what's been the most significant change that we've seen in the industry, and whether it's ebooks or on-demand printing or all these other factors. When they got to me, I said, really, more has not changed than has changed. And too much time and energy is actually being spent on the change. And the shiny objects of change is having people leave the field of what hasn't changed and what's most important. And what's most important and what hasn't changed is that we are still in the business of helping people. And people haven't changed. We're a 200,000-year-old species, and we haven't had a software upgrade since the beginning. We're still operating on gray matter 1.0, and we still operate the same. We have the same emotions, we have the same hopes, we have the same fears, anxieties, we have the same desires, dreams, and ambitions, and that hasn't changed. And so if we continue to keep chasing kind of what has changed and chasing the latest, greatest shiny object and new whiz-bang, we leave the field of what is most important and what we're really in the business of doing, which is impacting, affecting, and improving the lives of human beings and addressing the worries, fears, hopes, ambitions, and desires that they have got, and creating great art and work that can influence and affect that. Now, the mechanism of how we deliver it to them, whether that is in print, in ebook form, on a Kindle, on an iPad, on a podcast, on a CD, none of that matters very little. What matters the most is the business that we are in the business of, and that is affecting and influencing people's lives. And the base cause of the what drives the motives of those lives has not changed. So yes, there's lots of things that have influenced the industry from a technology standpoint and from a regulatory standpoint, but really more has not changed. So while you need to be cognizant of the regulatory influences, and you need to leverage the tools that technology is enabling, which is the blessing you've got with Mortgage Coach, because you've got Dave out there basically studying the innovations and bringing those innovations to you and placing them in your palm and in your lap to just use rather than having to create. So kudos to you, Dave, and to your organization for basically chasing the change and bringing, after vetted and improved, the solutions to the community. But as a loan officer, as a leader of a mortgage organization, I would be more concerned and focused in reminding of our organizational leaders what hasn't changed, and to be sure that we are properly focusing on and nurturing the part of our business that hasn't and will not change going forward, and that is that we are people helping people with their lives in some form, fashion, through our services that we bring to the marketplace. So that, and I leave the regulatory influence and I leave the technology innovation improvements, to your great partner at Mortgage Coach. But as your mentor advisor in general, I would just say don't lose sight of the most important part of your business, and that part has not changed.
First of all, it's a great answer. I mean, at the end of the day, we're driven by our why. What you said earlier, family versus style. And then, again, I heard that some of you weren't able to see some of these slides early on that I went through. But when you saw the leadership from Price Waterhouse and how they're, people still, when they review documents, they want a traditional personal experience. When they do research, they will use their mobile devices. They will, they can search for a home in the back of their pocket with Zillow, Trillia, and all the other things. And when it comes to compliance, there are new, as an industry, every loan officer needs to be ready to quote the total cost of a loan over 5 years. And they need to be able to quote TIP, total interest payment. So there are some real changes, and it's good to leverage technology. But to Darren's point, at the end of the day, are you file-focused or family-focused? What is your why? And then, again, the hardest thing of all, you brought up, to be a 2%er, it's all about focus. So great insight.
Dave, on that note, Dave, let me just give you a related example, okay? Because I think this is relevant for on the consumer side of the experience. So I recently just bought a new car, and I used technology, all the innovations that we all have access to now, to find exactly what it was that I wanted. So I was on the eBay Motors, I was on AutoTrader, I was on Cars.com, and I found exactly the car that I wanted, the color, the interior, the whole bit. Never had to talk to a human being whatsoever. When it was time to buy it, I called one dealer, and it was weird. It wasn't like the person was rude, but just in a matter of 2 minutes, I figured out I just didn't like this person. And I remember ended up hanging up the phone, and then thinking about, oh my God, I just hung up the phone. I wanted to buy the car. I called to buy this damn car, but I didn't like the person so much. And again, it wasn't like they were overt. I just didn't like them, that I hung up the phone and didn't buy the car from them. Somebody else that I contacted, they were just sloppy. They were sloppy in their responses over email. It took them a long time. Things were misspelled. There was a level of lack of professionalism that I lost trust in anything else that they said and any of the promises that they were making. And then the third dealer, same exact car, like the car is exactly the same in all three of these places. The third dealer got on the phone with the guy, instantly liked the guy, fast response, professional. I bought from the third guy because I liked him. That's the only friggin' reason whatsoever. And so that's what I mean, that technology and innovations are going to continue to expand your ability to get into conversations with people, the tools that you have to increase that opportunity and frequency. Technology can do it, but what happens once you engage with that human being? That hasn't changed. And people want to do business with people that they like, and people that they trust. And trust is created through credibility and professionalism and responsiveness and all the other human dynamics that inform us whether we can or cannot trust somebody that we're dealing with. Those things haven't changed. That's what I mean. So leverage what we've created with technological innovations, but don't forget to focus on the things that haven't changed, because in the end of actually creating transactions and influencing people's lives and being rewarded with the monetary value so that you can fund and fuel your own life and lifestyle dreams, that's going to come down to how you operate as a human being doing business with other human beings.
Love it. Great wisdom. So, folks, we're in the final 10 minutes. I am going to try to crowdsource one more question out of the GoToMeeting for today's call. So, Greg Wilcox, I noticed that you posted a question. I have dozens of others. But in 5 minutes, I'm going to go through and pick one question from everybody that's on the call. So if you want to ask Darren a question, this is Darren Hardy, Mortgage Coach Unplugged. One question, Darren, that I would like to do before we do that last question is, you said you were a millionaire in your 20s, and you were, and if you lost it all tomorrow, what would you do? What would be, as much time as you can answer in 5 minutes, what would be your detailed comeback strategy to lost it all for anybody that's on this call right now and they did lose it all, or they feel like they're starting from scratch? What do we do? What would you do?
Well, the first thing is to realize you haven't lost it all. You've actually lost very little. The only thing you've probably lost is your money and maybe a little bit of pride. But that's very little in comparison to what it is that you actually are and have. And what you have is all the experience and wisdom and the relationships that you've accumulated over the entire time you've existed on this planet. So what would I do if I quote unquote lost it all? I mean, all my money and any title, all the rest of that. I would just carry on doing what I'm doing right now. Quite frankly, the wealth of experience, the wealth of knowledge, the wealth of insight, the relationships that I have invested in and nurtured and developed makes me very, very wealthy. That actually can never be taken away from me. It's impossible to be taken away. So I would just carry on. Quite frankly, if I didn't have access to any of the money that I already have, then I would just keep carrying on. A really great example, though, about this is Todd. I mean, I wrote about it in the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. I mean, this is a guy that was on top of the world, had it all, and from every direction, right? Best-selling author, prominent speaker, wealthy, and then runs into just a series of disasters, truly. I mean, buying a big company and then having to sell it in a distressed sale, losing millions of dollars, having to carry millions of dollars of loss, and selling his primary company that he built his reputation on, and then basically being forced out of it, and then having the love of his life and his wife of 20 years die of breast cancer suddenly after a long, grueling battle, and being left with two sons who just lost their mother and having no business, no income, and no ability to create it, and the love of his life stripped away from him. I mean, this is the bottom of the bottom. Talk about everything being torn away from you. And I'm not, in hearing his story, I'm not sure what I would have done in that situation. It was so incredible. But then in that situation, this is how I write about it. Look, you have to find that switch, the switch that turns back on the love for what you do and that passion that you need to go and do it well and successfully. And it wasn't until sitting at the edge of his bed, sobbing, openly sobbing, that his 13-year-old son, Jonathan, came in and put his hand on his shoulder and said, Dad, we need you. We need you to do what you tell everybody else to do, and that's just to pick up and go on. And he looked up and saw the crystal blue eyes of his son and saw the hope and possibility that his former wife used to imbue in every room she entered, and it gave him, it reinstated his passion and his purpose. And a lot of people say that he stepped in to save his sons who had lost their mother, but as Todd will tell you, those two sons stepped in and saved him, because they gave him the fight, the passion, the love for doing what he did again so that he could pick himself up and go on. And, today Todd is more successful than he's ever been, married his dream girl, is more in love than he's ever been, his sons are thriving, and, we're talking about being at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. So that the key ingredient there, the takeaway, is you have to find your switch. And in the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, I talk about 4 switches. Everybody thinks that they have to love what they do. You don't have to love what you do at all, in fact. There are other switches that are available to you to turn on your passion and turn on the love for what you do and to empower you to do it at a high functioning level of success. So first off, know that if you lose your money or you lose your job, you have lost very, very, very little, because you still are and possess all the wealth of the life experiences you've got up to this point that you can reinvest in your next project. That's one. 2 is to get yourself re-engaged emotionally, you've got to find your switch. And I walk you through that in the book, because it's overly discussed that you have to find your passion, got to love what you do, but nobody explains how. And in there, I finally kind of break it down into how, and that it can be in a multitude of different switches. It's not just the one switch of you have to love what you do. That would be what I say.
Love it. Well, I love the wisdom. For anybody that's on this call and you're not where you want to be today, tomorrow can be much better. First of all, re-listen to this call and read Darren's book. So I've gained so much from our friendship, Darren, and so much from, your readings, your first book, The Compound Effect. This infographic from Mortgage Coach was really inspired by that. Just where if someone was just to take $5 a month and apply it to their principal and reduce their debt faster over time, how much faster they could pay off their mortgage. Everybody on this call, you're a mortgage coach. You have the ability to deliver more than rates and fees. You have the ability to deliver a great experience. To Darren's point, there's nothing more important than your likability and your professionalism and just how you show up, the atmosphere that you create for people, and the personalization that you deliver. This is one of the slides that you missed at the beginning, where they were really breaking down, what makes a loan officer great. What do consumers really want? Yeah, they want friendly attitude. Yes, they want knowledge. Yes, they want strong communication, but make it personal. Make it relevant. So for everybody on this call, hopefully you're adding audios to videos and making the advice that you're providing to families more valuable, more relevant, more tailored, and you're doing that in a modern way. So as a closing push for everybody, we are committed to helping you guys be more successful every Thursday. So 2 days from now, we will have a technical training call, and every Tuesday we are doing calls like this one. So next week we have Tom Ferry. Make sure you invite your realtors. We're going to really focus on video and mobile ideas with realtors. But today, guys, it's all about Darren Hardy in this week. Hopefully you've signed up for his Darren Daily update. Darren, I know this is something that's special, and you just came out with it today. If you wouldn't mind sharing with everybody what this special offer is and telling everybody how they can get access to it.
Yeah, it's actually not something we're going to release officially to anybody else until probably a month from now, because today's the launch of the book. So the first thing I would say is just go buy the book. Buy wherever you buy your books normally, or go to rollercoasterbook.com. But if you just wanted to sample it, get the introduction through Chapter 2, or to get the audio program, which is awesome. The audio program is so great. I love the way that we produced it. It's really engaging and interesting. You'll get the intro through Chapter 2 of the audio program as well. So if you just go to gift.rollercoasterbook.com, gift.rollercoasterbook.com, you get the first couple of chapters for free. But if you don't need a couple of chapters for free, you're already ready to go and just, pay the enormous fortune of, $30 to buy the book and the audio, I would just recommend doing that. But if you want to just sample it, you can go to gift.rollercoasterbook.com.
Well, thanks for letting us be the first to share it. I put that link in our Facebook page. Make sure everybody on this call is signed up for Darren Dailies. Make sure that you're checking them out in the morning. What good are they? I can't remember your quote on Tuesday, but it was just something about, how much do you know that you're not taking action on? And so make sure you're checking that out. Make sure for everybody that is already subscribed, you're going through the process. You're taking action on this. Again, I can't encourage you enough to get this book. I've already read it. I'm studying it. I'm going through it for my second time. So, fantastic book. Darren, thank you so much for your leadership today. Any last thoughts before you leave us today?
No, just I know that looking at the my redheaded friend Tom Ferry, he's part of our HPF CEO program as well. Awesome guy, brilliant, got tremendous insights. And if I'm a loan officer, I'd want to leverage that opportunity to load it up with my realtor partner friends, knowing that he's going to deliver great value for them, and then have it point back to me as the one who made that possible. I will say that having been a realtor, the one thing that I always looked for in a loan officer that I worked with exclusively was that it wasn't about them closing loans. It wasn't about them taking care of my clients. It wasn't about them being responsive with communication and so forth. I expected those as table stakes, like everybody does that, right? But it was the one that made decisions to invest in me. When they pointed out things that helped me be more successful, when they brought me to seminars, they got me on conference calls, they sent me materials, they bought me books that helped me be more successful for my goals in my life, those are the people I felt really indebted to, and those are the ones that I ended up doing business with. So opportunities like this to invest in the success of your realtor partners, and Dave is the one that's facilitating and paying for it and making it all possible, and all you got to do is extend the invite. Those are great ways to endear yourself to your VIP partners and clients and so forth, because as my mentor Jim Rohn said, you want to help people with more than just their jobs. You want to learn to help people with their lives, and opportunities like this allow you to help people far and above beyond just what you guys transact as business together, and help them with their lives. So that'd be my last comment that I would say there, Dave.
Hey, tremendous wisdom today. As you check out of today's call, please answer the survey poll on a scale of good to wow. And if you're a guest and you want to learn more about Mortgage Coach, click the bottom option. I'd like to get a demo and learn more. So, hey, Darren, thank you so much for the time to prepare to deliver great wisdom today. Can't wait to have you back in the Mortgage Coach community a few months from now or later in the year. And thanks again, my brother. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Have a great day, everybody, and have an awesome week.